Now, y'all know I love a good night at the theater, but I'm not just going out to be entertained. Sure, I want the acting to be good, but I also want to learn something too. That's why I'm excited about Timeline Theater Company's Chicago premiere of Notes from the Field. The show uses verbatim accounts from students, faculty, folks who've been incarcerated, and more to show the intersections of America's education and criminal legal systems and how they can and must be transformed. You don't want to miss it, and I don't want to miss it either. Notes from the Field is running now through March 24th at Timeline Theater in Lakeview. For tickets, visit timelinetheater.com. That's theater with an R-E. Today on CityCast Chicago, will the mayor renew or reject the city's contract with ShotSpotter? How do referenda work in Chicago? And where are the most and least romantic spots this Valentine's Day? Executive producer Simone Alisea is here with me to break it all down. It's Tuesday, February 13th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. Good morning, Simone. How you feeling?
I'm good, Jacoby. How are you?
I'm doing well. Obviously, we recorded this on Monday, so how was your Super Bowl Sunday?
I had to look up who won this morning. I will be honest. I didn't know when I woke up. It was I was funny because I ended up at a bar right when the game began, just sort of wasn't really planning on it. And so I caught Post Malone, I caught Reba, and the first turnover, and then we'd finished our drinks and pretzel bites, so then we left.
And then you checked out. I'm not gonna lie, I was locked in the whole time. I hosted people over at my house, and my favorite part though was during the halftime show when Usher started skating as I predicted. It wasn't like a hard prediction. He's been skating at the residency now for a year and a half, but eagle eye spotted two notable Chicago roller skaters out there with Usher. Two of my friends, people I grew up with at Rich City, including Bobby West, who was like a 5-year-old when my parents and grandparents started running Rich City, and Sydney Blaylock, who I started skating with when I was maybe 14, 15 years old, and we skated and have skated now for over 15 years together. So shout out to my homies. There was some Chicago representation, even though we wasn't on the field, we was out there on roller skates. Cause if you're gonna do roller skating for the world, there's gotta be some Chicago skaters in there. And, shout out to Usher for knowing that and representing. Starting off today's conversation, Simone, we're talking about something we've been talking about throughout our years here at CityCast, and that's the sort of will they, won't they momentum between the city and ShotSpotter. For CityCast listeners who might not be familiar, ShotSpotter, which has been renamed Sound Thinking, is a gunshot detection technology, and Chicago has been a client of theirs since 2017. The contract has been renewed twice throughout those years for a total of close to $50 million. And the current contract, which is highly controversial, is set to expire this Friday, February 16th. Mayor Johnson campaigned against ShotSpotter. I don't know. I think, my recollection is different. This might have been one of the things he most strongly campaigned against throughout his run for mayor. But since taking over the fifth floor, it sort of pulled back his tone of, again, will he, won't he reject or renew the conversation with ShotSpotter. Simone, there was a meeting last Thursday in Auburn Gresham at St. Sabina Church. What came out of that meeting?
I mean, I think exactly what you said is this sort of just this controversy and sort of the crux of the issue that Johnson is facing as mayor. There are a lot of critics of ShotSpotter have said that the technology is number one. There are accusations that the technology is straight up inaccurate, that it is not actually predicting gunshots where there are gunshots. The other critiques of ShotSpotter are that it is inequitable and unfair, that these microphones that are set up are primarily placed in Black and brown neighborhoods, that then leads to a larger police presence in those neighborhoods, over policing, and sort of we know that CPD has a pattern of bias policing, and this technology is not helping that case at all. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, the proponents of ShotSpotter and company officials themselves say that this is a technology that that can help police respond more quickly to incidents when they happen, right? If they know that that shots have been fired, they can more easily be and more quickly be deployed. The company has disputed any claims about the technology being inaccurate. Even at this meeting, you had officials from Sound Thinking who were there saying that, across all of their clients across the country, because this is a technology that many cities use, claiming that they have a 97% accuracy rate. Although, again, there's sort of there's been a lot of reporting over the year and sort of a lot of questions on that front.
Yeah, I talked to somebody who was at the meeting, which again included officials from the city, the president of the Commission for Police Accountability, the new civilian board, as well as members of the community, activists and advocates who have pushed back against ShotSpotter throughout the duration of his contract. I think one of the things I found fascinating but not unexpected was that you heard from individuals who have either survived gun violence themselves or have family members lost to gun violence, sort of speaking up for ShotSpotter, right? And one of the individuals I spoke to said that, you see this often, sort of, companies sort of, pigeonholing which narratives they choose to highlight when they want to prove the efficacy of something. Because they said, they themselves, people in the audience, have been people who have been wrongfully detained off of ShotSpotter detections. People who say, if somebody has been a victim of gun violence, that the police arrive to those situations, often treating them like they and their families are the assailants in the situation. And so I think what then gets I think one of the reasons the Johnson administration is likely going to wait to the end of the week to rule on this is because, with that being said, those people who are in the community saying, hey, we want something that makes us feel, that people are going to be responsive, that if I myself, am a victim of gun violence, that somebody is going to respond to me. But again, the question remains, is ShotSpotter, is that what it's doing? Is it solving that problem for people?
And this is sort of the other question about ShotSpotter that critics bring up, is not only the sort of baseline accuracy, the inequity issues, but also, is it actually effective? Is it doing what it says it does? And there has been a lot of reporting, from the city's inspector general. There was a recent report that the Sun-Times obtained from the Cook County State's Attorney's Office that has basically said, both offices basically saying that these alerts are not necessarily leading to more arrests on gun-related charges. They're not necessarily leading to, solving more crimes.
Expensive and inefficient.
Right. It's expensive and inefficient. But you bring up a good point, though, about there's sort of an element here of people who feel like, well, but it's doing something, right? Mm-hmm. Isn't it? It's a tool that can be used by the police to do something, to get some kind of information that maybe they didn't have before. And I think it's that sort of something is better than nothing mentality that mm-hmm. I think a lot of supporters have sort of talked about at that meeting.
I think Brandon Johnson has two questions to answer here. One is, will he renew or reject the contract with ShotSpotter? But if he keeps it or if he leaves it, how will that money be used moving forward? How can he, if he chooses to keep the contract or renew the contract, how does he push back against these reports out of the state's attorney's office, out of the inspector general's office, and say, well, this is how we're going to use it moving forward. This is the new mandate. And if he gets rid of it, all right, well, how will you be using nearly $50 million over the next, few years to provide more relief for those people who live in communities most impacted by gun violence?
The contract deadline is up on Friday. We're talking about this on Monday morning. It is entirely possible that we will get off this call and Mayor Johnson will announce a press conference to say what his decision is. The timing, though, is interesting. I think like 5 months ago, 6 months ago, I was very much like, yeah, you can't really say yet if you're gonna, you've got this contract in place, you have to hear everybody out. Yes, you campaigned on this, but also things change when you take office. Now that we're a week out, I think his silence is quite a bit louder.
He was not at the meeting.
He was not at that meeting in Auburn Gresham. I think there were lots of things that he campaigned on where he took kind of a middle of the road approach, or sort of it was very clear that he was like looking for a compromise, or hadn't quite made his decision yet. This is one of those things he said on the campaign trail that was sort of cut and dry, black and white. We will end the contract with ShotSpotter. And so I think right now the what is it? The chickens have come to roost. Is that the expression, right? We're here.
Shipping can make or break a sale, so optimize how you ship your orders with ShipStation. They make it easy to automate and manage orders no matter how big your business grows. And they might even be able to help reduce shipping and warehouse costs. So optimize and keep up your momentum for growth with ShipStation. Sign up for your free 60-day trial now at ShipStation.com and use the code POD. That's ShipStation.com with the code POD.
We are a little over a month out from the March primary. And so each week we're going to have a little election corner in our Tuesday conversations. And this week we're talking about the difference between non-binding versus binding referendum, because this is going to be important. Everyone is going to see a referenda question on their ballot. Simone, can you explain exactly what a referendum is?
Yeah, so a referendum is essentially a question about policy. Should the city do XYZ? I think Chicago voters are very used to seeing non-binding referenda on the ballot. We saw this last year where there were questions about affordable housing in different wards and in different precincts. This year, some voters on the west and southwest sides are going to see a question about should Chicago create a new police district? These non-binding questions they're essentially polls. They're essentially like, what do
trying to gain a temperature of the neighborhood?
Exactly. What do voters think should happen? It doesn't mean the city has to do anything. It doesn't mean anybody has to do anything. But it's another sort of data point that advocates can use, that politicians can use to say, this has support or this does not have support. Something that I think might be new to Chicagoans this year, to a lot of Chicago voters, is we have a binding referendum on the ballot in Bring Chicago Home, which, as we've talked about on the show, that is a tax on real estate sales over $1 million to pay for services for people experiencing homelessness, and to pay for new housing as well.
And would lower taxes on sales under $1 million, which is nearly 94% of all of the real estate sales in the city.
It would essentially change the tax structure entirely for this real estate transfer tax that already exists, raising it on some transactions and lowering it on others. This is a binding question about taxation. This is something that the city council had to vote on in order for it to get on the ballot. And if you vote yes or no, it says that the city of Chicago will or will not adopt this tax. The last time that Chicago voters passed a binding referendum was to create the city's Board of Election Commissioners back in 1885. WTTW reported this a while back, and I just feel like that's a really key point here, that was the last time we actually passed something via legislation via the ballot. It doesn't happen very often in Chicago that we have these binding questions on our local ballot here.
Am I correct in remembering the sort of push on whether or not Illinois should adopt a graduated income tax? Was that also a ballot referendum?
That was a ballot measure, but a statewide measure, right? So it wasn't
statewide.
That was a statewide measure.
Just Chicago.
That wasn't just Chicago. So I just mean city of Chicago voters specifically talking about a city of Chicago issue.
I bring that up to say it's one of those issues, like a referendum, especially when it's binding, is one of those things that you're going to see a lot of campaigning. I've seen commercials. I've seen placards.
I've gotten the texts.
A lot of money invested on both sides on whether or not people should vote for this, with advocates saying that it will give Chicago a sort of secure and steady flow of funding for homelessness services, with others saying that, it will discourage real estate investment, people buying major real estate development, investing in office space and the like.
Yeah, which when you think of like Chicago's office vacancy rates, like you can see kind of where that connection is being made. I think the other thing that's important to note too on the Bring Chicago Home referendum is that there is a lawsuit right now being brought by business and real estate interests to invalidate this question on the ballot. The issue here has to do with
we asked too many questions.
Well, the issue here, it's sort of there is actually a law against this. Like in Illinois, you are not supposed to be politicians, governments cannot take something that is unpopular and pair it with something that is popular to sort of sugarcoat it as a pill, right? And so what these business groups are arguing is that the addition of lowering the real estate transfer tax on properties under $1 million, on sales under $1 million, that is sort of unfairly putting two things together in a way that you're not supposed to be able to do. Of course, the city, disagrees with this, right? Like that it's all the same question because it's all about real estate transfer tax, right? It's not like your parent, it's not like you're saying, oh, we're going to lower, the amusement tax to raise this real estate transfer tax, right? But, if these groups are successful in their lawsuit, even though some folks may have already seen this if you've early voted or if you've got a mail-in ballot, that will be a question that will come up, between now and March 19th if these groups are successful in their legal challenge.
So I have another question. This is a primary. So for most of these things, we're voting for someone to then be in the bigger election later in the year. Is that the same for this referendum, that we're voting for this to ultimately end up on our November ballot, or does this take care of it right now?
That is a great question, Jacoby, because no, we are voting on this in March. This will be decided on March 19th, which, I think is really, really key for Chicago voters to keep in mind. And another thing that I always point out too is even though in the primary you're supposed to take a party ballot, right? A Democratic ballot or a Republican ballot to vote on those candidates. If, for whatever reason, you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can still vote on this referendum by taking a nonpartisan ballot. You can ask for a nonpartisan ballot and you can vote on referenda.
The city reports nearly 7,000 people currently experiencing homelessness. Advocates say that number can be 10 times that if you're taking into account people who are doubling up on housing or at temporary housing. Over 35,000 asylum seekers in Chicago, with that number growing. And so, that's going to, get a lot of attention over the next month. One more thing before we get out of here. With Valentine's Day tomorrow, Simone and I were kind of going back and forth about, what we think are some of the most and least romantic places in Chicago. And when I was kind of thinking through sort of my quick list, like a lot of things came to mind, but despite the temperature right now, Chicago obviously has so much access to the lake. And so when it is good outside, when it is nice outside, most of those lakes are overrun with people. But I think two places that typically throughout the day you might find less and less people are 12th Street Beach and the small beach behind the South Shore Cultural Center. You might get out there on a Saturday morning and no one is out there. And it's a great place to sit down, have a nice little picnic, have a nice little, brunch date with your individual. And so those are two other places. Other places I was thinking of, like obviously park spaces like the Garden of the Phoenix in Jackson Park, Ping Tom Park, with a little canoe action, can be really great. Simone, what's on your most romantic places list?
I think my brain was also going to outdoors as well. I think something I was thinking about though was anything that's like secluded or hidden, or that, right, that like you can have like a nice little intimate moment without the sound of the city, or like without feeling like it's going to be really crowded. a kind of underrated spot that I really like is the West Ridge Nature Preserve. So this is
Okay.
actually attached to Rose Hill Cemetery, and it's bordered by Western. I promise it's not the cemetery. It's not like there's a fence. You're not in the cemetery. It's like a park. Jacoby, I'm trying to tell you.
I was like, oh, yeah, I'm familiar. He was like, yeah, the one that bordered the cemetery. I was like, there you go. There's the Simone part of it.
But listen. Okay. So here's the thing, though. It has this like beautiful little pond and these like especially in the fall, in the autumn, it's got these gorgeous trees and the colors are just amazing. I have taken some beautiful romantic photos. There's a little trail and some logs to sit on. You can get some elevation. The duck, like you're at the duck pond, and you cannot tell that A, again, you're bordering a cemetery, or B, that you're bordered on a Western Avenue. Like it definitely, and like again, because of that, no one's going to be there to bother you. I promise you. No one is going to bother you on this walk, and it's going to feel like it's yours. You know what I mean? It's going to feel super personal. My other thoughts on that were the Montrose Point Bird Sanctuary. And then I was also going to say the South Shore Nature Preserve, actually, is another, like, again, just very intimate, very hidden. Like, you just feel like you're in a completely different world.
See, my nature preserve borders a golf course and a private beach. Your nature preserve borders a cemetery.
But also the other nice thing I will say about South Shore too is like the cultural center, I would also say is a pretty romantic spot. If you wanted to get some of the architecture, imagery, or you wanted.
I just think that entire area from the nature preserve, the beach, to the cultural center, I want it to stay like it is now, real vibey, real low key. But I do want more people to know about it and to enjoy it. My least, and I was thinking purely, like, obviously I could have said things like the 130th, over by the dump because it smells bad. But I picked places that I think
that people actually
will think are romantic.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't think they're romantic. I still would go though. Avondale Bowl and Replay Lincoln Park. I also put the rink on this list, but I have a reason for those two. Because for me and mine, like there's like, sure, these are nice date ideas, but like we end up in this thing where not only is it super competitive, but it's not asshole competitive. Like we are literally we're hyping each other up as much as we are interested in our own winning. But that means like, like when you like slap it, like when you're doing handshakes, you like slapping hands right after each start, like those get harder as the game is going on.
I see. It's like too amped to be romantic. Yeah, I see.
Exactly. So, I enjoy those dates, but I would not classify them as romantic.
Why is the rink on your list of least romantic spots?
That's more just in my experience. I am, typically a better skater. And so somebody just like falling on their ass for like an hour is not as romantic as you think. Even if it's like, oh, I'm going to teach you how to skate. It's like, yeah, you finna be falling. And then if I fall, and then, now we just falling. And the older you get, it hurts more. It was cute when like I was kids, but like now it's like, now it just hurts. And so like a skating date is always like this could end up being a painful thing.
Yeah, I think so. The first thing that came to mind when I thought least romantic spot was anywhere in Wrigleyville. I think, and this is not like if you're a big Cubs fan, if you're nostalgic about any one of those bars that's in Wrigleyville, if you're a big Metro person, or this is not for you. Like obviously you have emotional attachments to that area, but this is like the last place I want to be that I think of when I think of romance. Like it's
what about the Music Box Theater, man? You going there to see like a good show?
I don't think of the Music Box as being like true Wrigleyville, I guess. I think I guess it's like, yeah, there's still a lot of spots over there. There's still like Cubs parking over there, but like I just am thinking like on Clark, like anywhere along Clark, in that area.
Mercury Theater is fire.
Again,
I get it. They're closer to Southport.
They're on Southport. So it's like a different, I think of it as, I mean, again, on game day, it maybe doesn't feel different, but like during the rest of the year. Whereas I feel like Wrigleyville also outside the season is also not that great. Like, it's also not really where I want to be.
You don't think like a good Cubs game, just like a good Sunday, 2:00, just out there, 7th inning stretch doing the North Side Boogaloo, whatever the song's called.
No, I really like. It's fun. It's a good time. Like, I love a beer and I love to get a hot dog and I love to watch the game and like whatever. But it's a big crowd and like it's loud and I don't know. It's not romantic. That's not what I want when I'm looking for romance. My other thought was like, I actually literally anywhere that's like tourist heavy, I think by definition can't be romantic, in my opinion. Like, I don't want to be at the Bean or in Millennium Park at the height of tourism season.
Does that go for when you go on holiday too? Like if
I'm somewhere else, like,
yeah, if you somewhere else,
I'll be honest, like because like even like thinking about like the Eiffel Tower in Paris, I was like, I remember being there and like the crowds were so big and I was like, and everyone's taking their engagement photo. And I was like, God, everybody's doing the exact same.
What about at the dip off spot? Like the like across the street, down the street?
That's okay. Like a bit far afield from the attraction itself, I think is okay.
But if you in it, it ain't for you.
You know what I'm saying?
I
just think,
understand that.
because I don't know, like I don't mind being romantic in public, but I don't know. There's a difference to me of like being in public and being with like tourists,
It feels like you're speaking also again to either in season or even off season sort of right around. Because before I went nature, when I was thinking about the temperature right now, I'm like inside of a good theater, a good performing arts center, watching dance or watching a good show. I'm like, that's a good choice.
I was thinking about like Violet Hour, like one of those restaurants that's just like really cozy and
the aviary.
Like those are great spots right now. But yeah, like you gotta track your season. My other thought too for most romantic is pretty much anywhere with steps. So I think anywhere on museum campus, like MSI,
the
MCA steps. Yeah.
I really, and while you're sitting there, go inside and upstairs because until February 25th, Faith Ringo's exhibit is in there and it is beautiful. It's so good.
A lot of these spots you might see come up again and potentially some disagreement with me on Wrigleyville. In our newsletter, Hey Chicago, we have a segment running today about best engagement spots, which we got some help with from a local photographer. So make sure you are subscribed at chicago.citycast.fm. You can also find it, find that list and find those pictures on our website.
I want to give another thank you to our executive producer, Simone Alisea.
Thanks, Jacoby.
Hey, I appreciate you making time. Before we let you go, I want to give you a heads up. The deadline to apply to run for a position on your local school council has been extended through tomorrow, February 14th. So go ahead and get those apps in. And if you're hearing this like Kobe, what do local school councils even do? I got you. Go back and listen to our episode from last week to learn what powers LSCs have. Find it and all our past episodes at chicago.citycast.fm. I know I was supposed to give you an explanation right there, but I kind of already explained it in another episode. So, go on, check it out. I got some good news for you too. Lunar New Year celebrations continue this weekend with 2 days and 2 parades. The Argyle Lunar New Year celebration kicks off Saturday in Uptown and the Chinatown parade is Sunday. For start times and routes, check the links in the show notes. And for neighborhood guides, I'm going to give you that website one more time, chicago.citycast.fm. Join me bright and early tomorrow. We talking about dumplings. Peace.
Oh, I forgot to say my other dark horse romantic spot.
Which one?
Which is the Costco parking lot in Lincoln Park.
You
okay. Listen though. Okay, it's my stand-in for any spot in Chicago that you unexpectedly see the skyline. Because you know how there's all these spots in Chicago?
Because I'm not going to lie, there's this super rickety spot on the Green Line it's like tumbling, but if you look over, the skyline looks perfect.
And right, there's so many of these spots in Chicago where like you don't like, especially when you're like in the neighborhoods and you just like do not expect to see the skyline at all, and then you look up and you're like, oh my god, it's so pretty. And like I can imagine like a cute little Costco date, right? And I have like someone helping me lifting all that heavy stuff, and then oh, look at the skyline, look how cute, it's so pretty.